Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to another edition of Diecast Breakdown. This is one of our interview series where we pre-record the segment and we talk with somebody who is making waves in the world of diecast, and there are a few people making bigger waves these days than Mr. Glen Chou, who is the director of TSM Model and Mini GT. They are really kind of changing the game when it comes to premium diecast, especially in 1/64 scale, and have got models ranging from the tens of dollars to the thousands of dollars. And Glenn was kind enough to sit down with us and talk about what it's like to create a brand, and especially making their pioneering steps into 1/64, and what goes into making one of those castings. He kind of goes into detail on some of that. Unfortunately, there were some technical issues with this episode, but we pieced it together as best we could, and there's a few of our interviews coming up that are going to have a little bit of technical difficulty, but they're still very watchable and still very cool, and we absolutely wanted to share those with you. So again, thank you for joining us for this episode. We will be live next week with a discussion on Hollywood diecasts, the winners and losers of the best and worst Hollywood replicas. So be sure to join us live for that and join the discussion, because I'm sure we'll have some hot takes and topics that people will disagree on. But without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to us a few months in the past when we talked to Mr. Glen Chou of Mini GT.
You're watching Diecast Breakdown with Chuck Ellis, David Johns, and Mark McHotwheel. So sit back, strap in, and hang on. The breakdown starts now.
I am really excited today, and I'm not nearly half as excited as my co-host David here, but we have got Mr. Glen Chou, who is the president of TSM Model and Mini GT, with us today. Glenn, how are you doing?
Good. Nice.
It's very nice to see you too. Thanks for being here. Now, I will be honest, I am on the more baseline end of collecting right now, so I have yet to add a Mini GT to my collection. My co-hosts are much more versed in your stuff. I've been following it. It's beautiful. It's absolutely something I intend to add to my collection one day once I stop drilling all my cars apart and customizing them. But for now, I'm going to let my good co-host, Mr. David Johns, take the lead here a bit and start the chat off. So David, take it away.
Thank you, Chuck. Guys, you are in for a treat today. Glenn, thank you again on behalf of the show. We love, a part of what our show's mission statement is, Glenn, is to try and speak to the influencers in our hobby. And I mean diecast in general, not just 1/64. You guys have such a recognizable fingerprint on our hobby, and you've helped all of our collections get better. So on behalf of other collectors, thank you for that. And thank you for coming on the show today. As you can see, I am indeed the fan that Chuck talked about earlier. Absolutely one of my favorite brands. I tend to prefer some of the more premium stuff. And I just think it's amazing the scope and the variety of cars that you bring to our hobby. If I could, I'd like to maybe dive into some questions that we came up with as a show, because I think a lot of our fans and a lot of the viewers and listeners are really curious about the brand and the direction it's headed, and maybe the different directions that it's headed. I think you guys are about to be an even appreciated brand in the 1/64 space. And I'm excited for what we're going to talk about today. So if you're ready, I'm just going to fire away. Recently, a full credit to Mr. Lamley. He spoke with you a few months ago about what's happening with the brand and where you're headed. And I am so excited, but I want to start at the baseline here. Specifically about the Bugatti Divo that is coming out. You mentioned something that struck a chord with me. You said that your brand, you want to always focus on the shape over function, and maybe not necessarily cramming in as many features on a 1/64 casting as you can. Can you talk about that and how important it is for you for the car to look?
Well, it kind of related to the history of the brand, because we saw was what we
make in the back, 118, 112 scale, 143 scale, resin or die cast. And there's always been a gap for quite a long time between low scale with 164, because between the distribution channel where you have the toy stores and then require the age requirement limitations on the toy product, which limited the detail or the material they use. So you always have a gap of how good the 164 model can achieve at what price point. It's almost like, well, it's two separate worlds. Then when I decided to do the mini GT line, and I just tried to organize a way to approach this scale, then I said, no, compared to what's on the market, what I want to bring to the 164 community is we want to have a proper scale down model as close as there'll be limitation for material and cost, yes. But we want to get it as good. It's small, doesn't mean it's inaccurate. So that become our kind of rule number one. And the rule number two is smooth rolling. And the way we approach product is like, you would try to add functions or design character to the product, but you have to follow the rule, kind of the constitution. You don't want to create rule number 3 and then give out rule number 2. No. I mean, if you can, in order to create rule number 3, you must be able to achieve 1 and 2 at the same time. Otherwise, we don't do it. For example, on the disc brake, I mean, a lot of people say, hey, how come you don't have the brake parts in the wheel? Because no factory can guarantee us when we make 30,000 pieces, all of them roll smoothly. And we say, until we can achieve like in production, no brakes. It's actually nothing to do with cost issue. It's just like we have, rule number 2, smooth rolling. Any gets in the way, we don't do it. And that's what go back to what you said is for us, shape had to be correct. It's kind of like a hot dog. We want our food taste good and looks nice. But taste good should be first, then looks good, right? Yes. So if it's a model, it should look right first. Then you can start talking about open door suspension or any fancy functions you hope to add it to increase the fun part of it. But you could have all the gadgets you want and you look wrong. Then it's not a model anymore. That's why I told them it always had to start with shape. And then are we able to find a balance in between? Then we talk about adding features to it. And also, I'm also a collector myself. So to be honest, after you hopefully have 800, 1000 mini GT, I don't think it really matters if the door can open, because 4 years later, you might open this model and you will just appreciate the clean shape, accurate shape. You don't really care about open door anymore because to you, that doesn't matter at that point. So for us, we focus on getting the right shape with best balance between price and the quality and for long-term collection. So that's why we are not, for us, that's why the shape is so important as a priority number 1. Yeah.
That's very refreshing to hear. And I've told the guys on this show before, if I had my way, I don't need opening doors. Like I think when those gaps are off, it just takes away from the realism. And so I can really appreciate where you're coming from. And it's also nice to hear your comment about the disc brakes, because if you're not going to get what you want coming off the line, some diecast makers don't feel that way. They just say, send them out, whether or not it's a high quality product or not. And we all recognize it right when we get our cars. And a lot of times we're disappointed when an extra thing that they tried to do at the plant wasn't executed really well. So it's really nice to hear that. Mark, jump in. What question did you want to ask?
Let me see here. I'm going to go, you know where I'm going, to the Kaido house here. So with the Kaido house, that really kind of put Hot Wheels on a back burner for me, honestly, with some of these LC cars and some of these cars that are really hard to get a hold of. I just picked these up. I just bought like 5 actually, but I'm still waiting for them. But I just picked these up here. And to me, these are like RLC cars, and I can just click the button and have it at my door 2 days later. So, and then there's a possibility of having a chase in here. So I really like this aspect because it's
opening up creativity, like artwork, basically. Junmai, he's my favorite designer, and we hope to get him on the show one of these days. Wink, wink. So I love his passion for these cars. I have one. I have a 69 510 and two-door. And so these cars have really kind of pushed off some of the other cars that I was focused on. And I appreciate that. And then I guess it goes to another question. Do you foresee yourself kind of pairing with some other designers out there and doing some different spin-offs like you did with Junmai?
Well, we kind of, the work with Junmai is also a little bit history of ours in this part of business, because when Mini GT start taking off, we start having more product. We have different brands want to do cross-brand product with us. And at the beginning, it was very fun. You have brands and brands idea, but after a while, we evolve into a situation where we no longer just want to say, let's put a graphic and let's call it cross-branding. For me, that's not, I mean, at the beginning, yes, but we should do more. It's kind of like you should see growth, should get better. So we start to refuse some invitation from other brands unless we're looking for fresh, creative ideas. Not say, hey, Glenn, can I have this one with a pink color and with my drawing on the hood? For me, no, that's not fresh. That's not something unique. When I spoke to Jim about this collaborations, he's like, okay, Glenn, so tell me. I said, no, I don't want to tell you what I have. I mean, you know what I have, but that's not important because I'm not going to let you use any of my tooling. Because I said, make what you want to make. I don't want you compromise because Glenn's windshield is a bit shit. So your car have to compromise because my windshield size.
This side.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It's like, we're going to make brand new tooling. Do what you want to make. That's the whole point we have this collaboration. My job is turn your sketch, your idea into a reality, into a real physical model. And your job is to create something special, different, nice. And that's how we started. And it turns out to be a very successful direction. We are very happy. And every time you show me a sketch, always call me, always like, wow. Right. And then we will have this fun talk idea. Like when we did the 510 and he's like, oh, Glenn, I wanted to exhaust. I said, yeah, sure. We should connect in them. So that's why when you see the 510, you see the downpipe go all the way to the sides, all connected. It's like, well, can this happen? It's like, well, I'll make it happen for you. I'll try. And I enjoy that. So for us is we of course we are open for all type of inquiries, opportunities, but what we're looking for is a real fresh idea, something creative, and to have a cooperation, not just like put on a label a different color. And so if some of the fans there follow our product line, they start seeing a lot less those exclusive with this color was for this brand or this color for this area, it's getting less and less. And because that's one of the direction we are taking.
Well, that's a great answer. That's exactly what I expected. But yeah, it's just, these cars I can't keep up with them. At first, it was like a slow start. Like, oh, there's a couple 510s. There's a green one. And I forget what the other color was, the wagon, or just the two doors. And then now it's just like BRE, there's Sung Kang, and then there's just the Gretty one. So I'm excited because it seems to be doing really well. And I'm focusing more on those cars than I am on anything else right now. So yeah, I appreciate you getting together with him and creating something awesome. So.
And that's a really cool. I love hearing the origin story of how some of the amazing models that you put out come together. And I'm really curious about the answer to the next question I have for you, because in the interview, I also heard and got super excited that we might start seeing some American cars come out of Mini GT. And I'm curious about the story of the guy in the UK that had the rally car who led to the creation of a specific vehicle. If you could share with our audience how that happened and maybe how that might even mean different types of vehicles that Mini GT hasn't done in the past, we might start seeing those available.
Yes, he is a very good friend and good customer. In the past, we did a couple custom model project of his race car in the past. So last year we got a call from him. He's like, yeah, I got this Lincoln I raced in Italy and I want a 12 scale model car. And then, by the way, I want some 164 when I go to the 2022 race to give out to my friends and friend kids. I said, okay. And I was thinking about it because I have been thinking, of course, we based in LA and a lot of them always asking us, well, Glenn, what are you going to do more American car, not just on Corvettes, and are you going to expand it more? But for me, coming from the background of these premium models, and one of the things I do when I thinking about how to create a model is how to capture the so-called essence of the car. For example, you're doing the Japanese car or hypercar from European, they talk about sharp lines, clean, how you detail, how thin the wings. But when you do the classic American, which is, it's actually, I love it. I always want to do it. And right. It's not, I mean, when you look at big Lincoln or 60s Kellogg, it's like the chunk metal with thick pans, but still you have a unique shape by itself. And how do we recreate like in the 64? So I was like, you know what? I'll do this because I really want to. So actually this project started out as an inquiry and I want to use it as a concept test project to see what we can turn out to be. So when I called my guys in China, they were surprised because normally we talk about, oh, the pen is too thick. You need to turn it down a little bit. Right. Now they're like, no, make it thick. As like when you go to the museum, you see an old Lincoln. No, you got thick pens. I mean, and then we increase the weight. So that my Lincoln model is actually 70 grams, 70, very heavy. Normal mini GT is about 50. So that's 70 grams. And then the result come out very nice. We are actually modified the tooling now because the original tooling was based on that race car. And now we're going to modify it and we will produce some of the Lincoln and then some of the race car in Pan Americana in Mexico in the past. But we have found out how we would like to develop and present the classic American car, the combination, how we should do it. And we'll be doing more classic American car from now on. I think we got about 5 or 6 cars right now in planning and developing stage.
Fantastic. Great news.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Mark, you want to?
I guess other question. Let's see here what we got on the list here. What are your top 5 favorite castings? I know that's a really tough question. You being a collector, I can see you got a ton of cars behind you, and that's probably only a fraction of them. What are your favorite?
That's hard.
Just give us. We'll need 5. Just give us the top 3.
The Lincoln though we just talked about, that really is one I'm really happy with. It may not be a hypercar, like I said, but the way I always feel it's a good casting that really, I mean, it's easy for you to wow somebody with a Lamborghini. It's much easier. When you and then not just one American, I have friends from Japan and China. You get a wow from them on a 60 Lincoln. That's not easy. And I got a lot of people was like, wow, when I give it to them. So that's really one of my favorite casting. I like the Bugatti, the Vision Gran Turismo. That one turned out about 10-15% better than I expected because when we were doing that to try to capture a little bit engine detail because the engine is exposed on the W12 engine. And then we had to try to make all the arrows as thin as possible. And at the same time, I just a little bit worry if they can really print the carbon fiber pattern while we happen to achieve all that. It's a very popular model. It's a lot of work trying to get all the parts work and come out with a good balance. And then I always have a special place with the Civic Type R, the FK8, because that's where we started. And then we learned a lot from that casting because I talk about that in a few interviews before, like, if you have brands that they used to make 143 or 118 and they step into the 164. And I admit I had a little bit of that too. I mean, although I did a lot of research, we still have a little bit arrogant naturally. I mean, oh dude, I make as big as 1A, right? So how hard could it be on the 164? you really always are. And then until you step in, and then you learn your lesson. You were like, oh my God, it's too small. It's not possible. It's not cheap. No. And you have all that. Then you start understanding it's a different beast. and from that process, you get a lot more respect to and that's where I adjust my attitude. I adjust my thinking about 164. Although I was prepared, but it's still more challenging than I expected. So it's always, and for me, finally we achieve it. Okay. So that's,
I can take a break and rest. Yeah, I can sleep tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I think
Yeah.
to add on top of FKA is, and I actually want to share with audience a little bit is, and it's unique. A lot of people never thought about it is the production line, because when we are making high end $400 up to $4,000 model, it's normal because the worker will say, oh, you know what? This is VIP customer. This is $500. It has to be the best. But imagine the production line, the workers, they were like, oh, you know what? This is $10. So what's a big deal? They will carry the attitude. Out of that 1,000 people on the production line, I'll bet you 800 of them will think like that. Glenn, come on, it's only a few $. Why? Why so demanding? And that would be hard. That was one of the most challenging to do this job, because you have to change their thinking and say, no, it's small, but you still want to be precision, right? It's not because it's few $, so you can be sloppy about it. But it's part of human nature. Right. It's part of human nature.
It is.
So
that's something that's great.
Yes.
That's a very good point. And it kind of leads into my question, because like I said, I am the classic ugly American collector. I collect mostly American cars and cheaper cars. And for me, going extravagant means paying
$15,
$10 or $12 for a fancy Johnny Lightning or a green light. But as I'm evolving in the hobby and getting into this more, it's really exciting to see these more high end cars and appreciate like even the little details, like getting the weight of the car, making it feel weightier because it would have been a bigger car. And I think that's very cool. And Mini GT is 5 years old now. So it just turned 5. And as a marketing guy, I love hearing stories about how brands grow in unexpected ways. But could you have any anticipation, the kind of impact that Mini GT would have coming into this space? And could you talk a bit about your reactions to the brand as it's grown?
Yeah, it's certainly, it's grown a lot better and faster than I originally anticipated, because although I've been in the model industry, I haven't been very involved in 164. And so, of course, we all do our best. We want to share the idea, because when we found the Mini GT, we feel we found a niche on the market that's lacking to have the balance with the correction, more scaled down replica model than toy. We found a little bit niche, we think. But it's, of course, I appreciate all the fans' support. We grow a lot and very different than what we 5 years ago. So that was never, I'll never dream we would become this where we are 5 years now. So that certainly is always a surprise. But even for myself, I finding changes in my thinking toward model car. I was talking to my engineer yesterday, because part of my job is every 2-3 days, I get this package from China, and you open, you have 18, 12 scale, 64 scale, 43 scale. I need to check all of them, mark my comment, and if approved, I'll sign, review. Then I really start enjoying the 164 scale more and more, because a lot of the high-end resin models I love them. It looks so nice, like a real car, so detailed, but it's like almost a 3D poster, because you cannot do anything to it. You don't break anything, little antenna. So you look at it, very nice. You put the cover back on, and that's it. And then you look at it from behind the cover. But with the 164, I had to test roll it this way, roll it that way, see how far it goes, and check the tire, if the tire is fitting correct. Or sometimes you have the tire not as wide as we also, and you find yourself have more interaction with the model, and the pressure, and you don't get tired of this job. We all love model car, but if you're going to look 500-800 model car per month, you get burned out pretty quick. But it's not interaction keep you going, because you feel there's something between your model car. You try to take care of it, try to do little things to make it a little bit nicer, and you can touch it, not afraid of breaking anything.
And so I found myself start to enjoy the 164 car a lot more than 5 years ago. The attitude thinking is also changing and evolving.
Yeah, I love that answer, guys, because I think it's important to open your cars that you buy. I think there's a level of appreciation you can't get sitting there looking at it behind glass all the time. So I love that you said that, Glenn, and it is really cool to see somebody gravitate from the super high end 1/18th scale to really start to kind of dig these 164 scale, because the brands, you guys are leading the pack, but there's a lot of brands that are doing fantastic stuff in that scale. And I want to talk about something that you've got coming out. I own a Corvette. My dad gave it to me. I love your C8. It is my favorite C8 out of all the ones that other companies have done. And I noticed that you guys are doing a C6 in the future. And I'm just curious as a Corvette fan, and I'm going to ask on behalf of the other Corvette fans, if maybe we would see more Corvettes in the future, even some of the older stuff.
Yes, I have been thinking about this. I mean, personally, I'm a big fan of, actually, I like Corvette. We were, I was awesome. At the Peterson Museum 2 days ago, and I was with the designer from Bentley, and I'm showing him the Peterson Museum, and we saw this, and I was like, oh, you know what would go very well? We should have a C4 Corvette from Carway, like green. Well, we should do that.
David,
Yep. So, and then also, I'm always a big fan. I'm thinking try to find one and restore a Coca-Cola body C3 with Targa. And then my wife and I are also crazy about C2 split window. So there's a lot of idea in our mind, and then we are thinking. I've been thinking about it, but I want to find the right timing to do the car. So definitely, it definitely is in here. So I'm not sure when we'll do it.
I'm so glad to hear it.
It's here.
Yeah, that is fantastic. All right, I got what I need, guys. Y'all fire away.
You pulled on the heartstrings with the split window Corvette right there. It's one of my favorite, because it all goes back to Datsun when Peter Brock, he was a designer of the split window.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love everything BRE Peter Brock. So that's something I'm excited for.
Part of the fun of this hobby and collecting, you've talked about resin and you've talked about other premium brands, and I won't ask you to name any names specifically, but I'm always curious how folks in our industry build their collections. So what are some of the favorite places that you go when you go shopping for castings? Like what type of hunting do you do for your collection?
Well, these days, I mean, to be honest, part of our business, we are also distributor for a couple of different brands of model car like Spark and a couple of European brands. But funny enough is I was also always busy in office or meeting or flying. Actually, normally in pre-COVID, I will probably stay in the hotel about 100 days per year. I will be in the hotel traveling meetings. So this often I come back to the office and I say, hey, we should get this shipment. We should have some new model car. And they'll say, hey, Glenn, sorry. So then what I do is we go to events like a Pebble Beach or Daytona's, and we will have customer have booths on site. And I'll walk into a booth and say, hey, how are you? Can you start a tab? I need to do my model car shopping. And the dealer would look at me like, Glenn, we just came from your warehouse 3 days ago. I said, I know. I need to buy them.
So sold out from underneath.
That's funny. That's like we were just talking to Brendan Matuski at Hot Wheels and how he has to shop for the cars he designed because he doesn't have time or the ability to just get them from them directly.
That's funny.
Yeah. And then it's not only the casting. Sometimes I try to be understanding, try to think more like a collector. When I happen to be in Asia or Europe, I love to try to find local shop, dig into it, enjoy that. To be honest, it's more, we have now less like kind of old style hobby shops that have tons of model car for you to dig in there. Few hours. We don't have that at this time in LA anymore. So I love doing that when I had to oversee and try to recapture that feeling, try to dig in, see if you can find a unique cat, that type of experience. But my collection for model car always changing because it kind of like the business too. It's when I started this business long time ago, of course, anybody make model car, it's no brainer. Let's make Porsche, let's make Bugatti, let's make the famous race car. Over time, because you're exposed to more different type of car, the taste change. For example, like a Formula One car back then, 15 years ago, I don't care because for me, it's like, oh, they kind of look the same. Is there any difference? Then one day I saw this Tamiya Model Q 6-wheel. I was like, what the heck is, why the car is 6-wheel? So then I start studying, then start realize, oh, in the 60s, 70s, you have all different type of Formula One car. Everybody, this guy trained 6-wheel, the Lotus is trained aerodynamic, and then you have Ferrari say, hey, aerodynamic is for somebody who couldn't make an engine, just put a big V12 and power through everything. And that was fun. Everybody trying different things. And then I start getting to Formula One. And at the end, we make tons of Formula One model car now, especially on the classic. Then one day I learned about coach building. So like classic early Rolls-Royce, Bentley, where you buy the chassis, you're a coach builder, building the body, suits your lifestyle, your target. Then I dive into that. So we start making Rolls-Royce model 10 years ago. So my collections, my thinking of car changes, and I always learn something new. And now that's actually how you see what Mini GT is doing today, because I'm trying to give a collector. A lot of people ask me, Glenn, why you come out so many model car? We can buy all of them. The goal is not for you to buy all of them. I appreciate if you could, thank you. But my main goal actually is just, I feel I want to allow collectors to have choice to pick the car they want and build their own unique collections. So I give them options and variety. That's my real target.
Yeah, I love, Glenn, that you that variety is amazing. That is what's coming out of your plants. Just for an example, to my viewers and listeners right now, this guy practices what he preaches. We've got a new Subaru coming out from Mini GT. It's a rally vehicle. It looks super cool. You can see a preview on that Lamley video. Are there other automaker brands? And you don't have to name them, but would we expect new name brands coming out of Mini GT in the foreseeable future? Cars that you haven't done before?
Right now, because that Subaru is kind of echoes to the Stratos and Deltas we have from Italy. And then we just announced we would be doing the new WRC from the M Sport, the current hybrid WRC. So, we haven't planned anything on the classic rally car yet. I think now we are happy with Stratos, Delta, and we focus on finishing Subaru first. And then we're going to turn around to catch up on some modern rally car. Then from there, we will decide what's the feedback from collectors. See, should we lean it toward more modern, or they want us to do more classic car? We want to take the feedback, then we go from there. But that's the directions.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love that you guys are giving the fans what they want, and we tell you what we want by what we buy. So there's your challenge, Mini GT fans. Buy what you like so we can get more of them.
To piggyback off of what you were saying with going to the smaller collector stores and shopping, and I guess one of our questions is, do you foresee these hitting the bigger box shelves like Walmart or Fred Meyer, some of the bigger stores? Do you foresee us being able to find them there, or are you trying to keep them more so for smaller distributors and just online and stuff like that?
It's not let's say we currently don't have plan with the mass market channel for a few reasons, but it's not purposely, but or strategic reason. It's more for actually back to the first question. It's actually because most of the mass market will require age rated. They still see this as toy. To them, there's no such thing as reading copy. So our products is rated 14 plus,
right,
which we need to upgrade it to, or downgrade it, depends on how you see it, to A or 3 plus. The moment we start doing that, we had to sacrifice shape, paint, color, all that stuff, which is not acceptable back to the condition number one. And then basically that's it. It's pretty much everything off the table. And that's actually the main reason, because they don't, our product appear overseas, like in Japan and some European department store, because they have this concept of adult collectible. So they understand there's a gray area because they have like high-end train, diorama and that thing. So, but in US, I mean, you couldn't even find a HO scale 187 model car because you'll fit into a choke tube and that will be dangerous for children. So they don't offer that type of product. So I think that's one of the main reasons you don't find adult collectible hobby stuff in the mass channel. Yeah, for us. And that is really the biggest hurdle, kind of why you don't see a lot of the premium models into the mass market. But to be honest,
So
I'm okay with that. I mean, opportunity, but for me, I don't see anything wrong because I'm equally happy that small dealers actually have some product that's different than Walmart and Target, because that is how I started my business and how I started my own collection. You go to Hobby Town, Hobby People, you go to a small hobby shops. So I'm also okay that hobby dealers should have some product that is different from the mass market and they can survive in that business environment. So for me, it's fine. Yeah. Be great to have more places for fans easier to purchase our product. That's definitely various different challenges.
Shame. Well, thank God for the internet, and then you can pretty much get them anywhere. I think one of the things that comes to mind is like when you say the smaller people. One of the places that I bought from, or I tell people to go to Datsun Garage. They work with Unimai, and they're just a smaller company, and they sell Datsun parts too. So I'll be buying some stuff off them as well. But it's nice to see them being able to kind of work directly with the designer and sell a product as well, instead of just kind of putting it out there in the big box stores and just seeing what happens. And people that, just, it's a nicer thing for smaller businesses. So I appreciate that. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, that kind of explains why we buy them where we buy them.
I think that makes sense too, because like Glenn said, it's kind of hard to appreciate what those vehicles are when especially if they're on the shelf next to a car that costs a third the price or a fraction of the price. I think a lot of it has to do with the presentation. So that makes sense to me. Like the other thing I could think of is that it's just really hard to manage shrink, for the lack of a better word, the ability of pocketing a car that small as well. So I would see that being a high risk factor for them as selling it. They'd have to sell it like behind a counter or something. So that makes sense to me. But, again, I think that's part of the allure of the hobby, is that there's different stages in the journey, and that you're always like, there's always something new, some new facet to explore. That's why we can have a show like this, is because there are so many different ways to collect the hobby, whether it's main lines or paying 40, 50, 60, couple $100 for either a vintage or a highly detailed vehicle like that. So yeah, I think that's an interesting move, a good one, I think, for y'all. Not that you asked, but can we talk a little bit more about some of the F1 cars that you have in the works? Because that's kind of a blind spot for me. So I know you've got a couple more that are on the way, and we've talked a little bit about that. So why don't we talk about what's coming next for those of our audience that are F1 collectors?
Sure. Formula One cars. So we just talked about P34, the 6-wheeler. In our range, we created 1A, 112, 143, 118. 164 is the last year. I have to do it. So it's coming up.
Yeah.
Right now, they're doing the final adjust in the tooling. Expect to have the color sample in August and start a pre-order. So the first two car will be the Terrell P34, the 6-wheel car, and then the first so-called real aerodynamic Formula One, the Lotus 78. And awesome. I choose these two cars because I spent a lot of time on these two cars when we're doing 118 scale. More than I think I visit probably 4 or 5 Lotus 78 around the world. I went to Tokyo, Japan to photograph 2 of them. Then I found one in UK's museum hanging in the middle of the air. Then I went to Classic in Lotus, the family who used to run Lotus, and they have one. So I remember, I think I photographed and studied at least 4 or maybe 5. Yeah. And same as the P34. So
Did you drive
no,
any of them, Glenn?
unfortunately, it's not. We have another problem. I was too big for the seat. I wouldn't fit. I can only fit. I tried, but I only fit halfway.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
But those will be the first Formula One, the two Formula One car. We will have not only making a car, we actually will have different setup for different race. For example, in Japan, the P34, that was a raining day. So you actually happened to run a supersized large rear wing. Then it has this spatial air box on top of the engine to filter out the rain water in a unique shape. And then they have rain tire. So we will have a rain tire and dry tire, slick tires. And then they have few Japanese decals on it. So we will have different setup for the car. For example, in 77, you have a very well-known driver called Ronnie Peterson. And Ronnie Peterson is quite tall. So they have to put an even higher roll bar. So before that, we create a special higher roll bar just for Ronnie Peterson's 77 version. So what we try to do is we took in those really nice little details we do in 43 or 118 scale, bring them to 164 for the collectors. And we feel over time, people start see the difference, the effort we put in every little car we produce.
I hope the fans heard that you went to different places, looked at them in person to get it right. And that's what I've always appreciated about the brand, Glenn, is I've never gotten one that had anything less than an absolute perfect reproduction of that vehicle. And that's not lip service. That is me. I didn't buy all of those in the background by chance. I really spend my money frugally. And so I chose your brand because they're always winners. They're always really well done. And I can see, based on what you've told us about how you had to get the plant workers in line and in tune with your quality control expectations, that it just comes off in the brand. And as a collector, got to say thank you, man. It is so refreshing to hear that you want something that you are absolutely proud of everyone that comes off the line. So that's my soapbox. And I just wanted to let you know that somebody noticed your appreciation for quality.
For Formula One, we won't stop just these two cars. So we do have plan coming out more classic Formula One. We normally, when we start heading toward new territory, new categories, we will not just make one car and that's it. Because for me, it's strange, right? You will have one or two cars in the collection, lonely on that corner and doesn't have friend. You need to have a couple of friends sitting around it.
Yep.
So it's the same, but we started Delta, we started Stratos, then we add Subaru, and then we add modern WRC. Formula One, same. We're going to have this two car. We have, I think on the classic Formula One, we have about 5 more cars in development and planning. So it definitely will be a category by itself. We will have different Formula One cars coming.
Glenn, did you say you were going to do a Saturn? I thought I heard that wrong.
No.
Well, man, that was my next question.
I used to have a Saturn. That all right. I got you.
That's
all I talk
David
about.
Jones needs. He needs.
I just need a Saturn and 164
That's all he
scale.
talks about.
All right.
I think it'll do very well. Very well. I'm gonna start a GoFundMe for David so we can, whatever it costs. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. I may not have the pool. Boom.
We'll make it happen. Whatever it costs. Oh gosh.
Yes. I mean, just a few things we want to say is why we feel Mini GT, the direction will be a bit different is we really taking the resource we have in the larger scale, because not only as a model car producer, we are actually OEM supplier for many major car company around the world. I would say, pretty much every single car company in UK is our customer.
Yeah.
And we supplier for Honda, for Nissan, for various different, and we wanted to take what we have in data out of the scale to the 64 and try to make the model much better and nicer. So the collector can be proud of the scale just up there with the big boys who spend thousands of dollars on larger scale. That's really always our goal. So our product range will always in the combinations of new car and classic car, race car and JDM car, even sedans. And then I'm not sure if you think we actually make semi trucks too. So we have this Western Star truck, and then we have the actuals from Mercedes. So, and that will always be the direction we're going. So, and Corvette now we're going to have the new Z06 next week. And then we work closely with GM. Yeah. So you could expect more Corvette with us.
And Ford.
We have two Facebook. One is, of course, the Mini GT official Facebook. And then one is I started a small page related to the model car. What I try to do is the official page is where we announce all the official information release. But my page is more sharing the background. I always feel it's not just try to sell model car over model car. I want people to start to understand the story behind the model car or the process or what we do to create and the story behind it, because we are not just some businessman try to sell you some product. I want the fan to understand we are also petrolhead. We love cars sometimes a little bit too crazy too. We want to show them all the things behind so they can have more understanding of the process in our industry than what they see just on the surface or the store. So that's why I created a little personal page myself to share that side of the business and to have engaging communication with fans as well.
All right. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you again, Glenn, for joining us on Diecast Breakdown. And thank you to my co-hosts, Mark and David, for another fantastic interview process. Again, these were recorded a few months back, and they had A block and B blocks where we kind of did some diecast news, but of course those are all like 6 months old now. So not exactly news so much as a history lesson as to what we were into 6 months ago. So we've got a few more of these pre-recorded interviews before we get to our more updated pre-recorded interviews. So they'll have me in the beginning talking about why we're here, just like this, except now I'm at the end. But yeah, as always, we want to thank our patrons and our members who keep the show going. You can learn how to join their ranks over at diecastbreakdown.com or by clicking the join button if you're watching us on YouTube. And we really appreciate everyone who has kind of made this show possible. That there's over 25 episodes of the show now, which is pretty incredible. A lot of podcasts don't make it that long, and we're working really hard at making this a more regular thing and a more consistent part of the diecast culture. And yeah, we really, again, thank you for helping make that possible. If you can't support us financially, you can always click the like, subscribe, ring the bell. That really helps tell YouTube that this is something that diecast folks want to listen to or watch. And that really helps a lot. So again, thank you to Glen Chou of TSM Model and Mini GT for joining us. And thank you for making it to the end of this episode. As always, we want to thank you for coming along with us for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.
Thanks for listening to Diecast Breakdown. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend to listen in. Find Diecast Breakdown on your favorite social media platforms or visit diecastmedianetwork.com to learn more about this and our other projects. Diecast Breakdown is a presentation of Flying Valiant and the Diecast Media Network.